throughout this conference based on what we already know about you.
Yeah, and even go as far as allowing the attendees to help to create the topics that will be discussed at the event by surveying them beforehand, asking them what they want to talk about or what they want to hear. And then we can really cater to attendees as opposed to just assuming that they're going to want to hear this stuff.
Yeah. So when you're talking about content, it really makes sense because I'm interested in a specific like topic, but it's more than that. It's like who is going to give the talk in many cases, right? There are like people who really are good at speaking, and there are people who are really smart and they have lots to say, and they are really experts in what they're doing, but they're not that of a speaker, right?
Mhm.
So I'm just thinking about rating the speakers.
Nice.
And like people like me rated it, like, you know, like in booking, you know, families said that and salespeople
that.
said that, right?
Yeah,
So
and
it's like,
maybe giving people more like highlight videos of past talks by that person, or get a preview of this session.
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
do a lot of surveying after each session as well. And that way, like you're saying, we can get that data, and maybe next year that speaker doesn't get invited back, or they get invited back for a panel instead of their own talk.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You can also use
Yeah,
filters for
which is a
things.
bit like you're not that good as what you think, right?
Yeah.
It could be painful. We could also use filters, right? Rather than just having a printed schedule, an online schedule can have filters for the type of session, is this a workshop or not? Does it have breakouts or not? What level of complexity is there? Is it beginner or expert? And that could
Right.
also help you.
Yeah.
I think
And you can filter the attendees, of course, if you want to meet someone and
Mhm.
he's in workshop or
yes.
something like. If
Yeah,
I'm a
and-
salesperson, I would be interested in that, I guess. Right.
Mhm. Yeah, so we're already getting that type of data for the workshop facilitators, for the expo booth managers, like who's attending your sessions, who's the most engaged, so you can follow up with those people who stayed through your whole session or who downloaded the most materials from your booth. So that level of follow-up customization from data is already there, and it's only going to get better.
So you already have these platforms giving you all this data, right?
Yeah, exactly. So you
So,
get great reports for each sponsor, for example. Like, here's your top leads to follow up with. That would be much harder to get
ooh.
in person.
Yeah, it's like exactly who you are and exchanging these cards and who he really is and how many like things he was interested in and how much time was he there and what kind of application or softwares platforms you have for these kinds of events.
Yeah, so there's different interactive conference platforms out there, dozens of them, that have this type of functionality. And the basic ones just have provide the content, but the maybe enterprise level things add on personalization, customization, white label branding, and this data layer, right? Some AI features.
And we can even run contests, for example, with the most engaged attendees, the people that have made the most connections or attended the most sessions. So we can gamify the experience.
And that's a great way to drive the specific actions that meet your business goals, right? So if you do have, let's say, a trade show style event, and you could incentivize people with different prizes for downloading booths and downloading materials from booths, requesting appointments in booths, visiting the most booths, and then your sponsors know, or well, they're going to see through the results that they're getting their money's worth because they're trying to win. They like to win these types of things. They're competing. Yeah. So that really helps.
I see. And we talked about connections and networking. So how do you see virtual events like change and how people will interact with each other? It's, you know, it's very different when you have remote and like when I go to these events, I find that many of the most interesting conversations that I have, you know, like is in the coffee break. It's not within the workshops, right? So how do you do that virtually?
Well, we're moving toward more highly engaging virtual events as opposed to just a presentation where somebody sits and listens. And it's really audience dependent, but I would say most audiences want to have more engagement, not only with the speaker, but with each other. So utilizing breakouts in a strategic way to really get people talking and forming more questions before the event that the presenter can present to the audience, as opposed to just having your slides and just giving a talk. Instead, what questions can we form to the audience to get the conversation going, to get innovation really happening, and people excited to talk and share ideas with each other? So that's one direction that's really starting to take off. But then also there are tools that allow for some of that hallway discussion type feeling, like table-based networking, we call it, where it's more organic and people can just show up and hop into a table and have a conversation with those people, the people at that table, and then leave and jump into another one.
And I think the way to be improving that in the direction we're discussing is like those AI connection recommendations for the networking, as well as maybe inserting icebreakers into the table-based networking, more strategic themes for those things rather than just random connections. So you kind of know, not only are you discussing this theme, but you've been recommended to connect with other C-suite people or other marketing people at the event. And here's some icebreakers to start that focused conversation. So it's really speeding up, saving the time, finding the right people, having the interesting conversations that you want to have.
So I understand how it works in remote events, and I understand how it works in real life events. So how do you do it in hybrid? Some people will really have coffee. Some people will be, without real coffee, or at least not from the barista that is there, right?
Right. Well, I mean, it's yet to be seen to what degree attendees really want to connect across the online in-person bridge. Right now, most events are focusing on bringing the content to both audiences, but networking usually happens mostly separated. Okay. Because if you went to the in-person event, generally you're going to want to see in-person people. But I think the exception for that is when you have those really guided connections, that the really valuable connections. Yeah. Okay. Even though I drove here, I'm gonna go into this little computer area and talk to this one person because we know that we have X, Y, and Z to talk about.
Yeah, I would say we're really excited about the opportunities for cross-pollination with the in-person and the virtual, because we're also moving into an era when the virtual component of a hybrid event may be much larger than the in-person component. So